The key to success here is to be crystal clear. This is not the time to be subtle. You have to explicitly state your belief in a supreme being. You need to describe your worship.
B.I.G. Charity Law Group. Email us at welcome@charitylawgroup.ca or give us a call at 416-488-5888.
Imagine this for a second. You pour your heart, your soul, everything you've got into building a spiritual community. You decide to apply for charitable status so you can do even more good work. And then you get that letter. The one from the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, and it tells you that your organization, well, it just isn't religious enough. It's a shocking and frankly frustrating reality for so many groups, and today we're going to dig into exactly why this happens. I mean, it's a wild question, isn't it? But it's one that a lot of faith-based organizations are being forced to ask. It just feels so backwards. How can a government agency turn around and tell a spiritual center, a temple, a mosque, that it doesn't actually meet the definition of religion? And this is the kind of language you'll see in that letter. The CRA basically says, nope, what you have here isn't a religion, it's a philosophy. There's really nothing quite like having your entire spiritual path, these deeply held beliefs, dismissed as just a philosophical hobby by a tax agency. It's frustrating, it's confusing. It's like you've baked this beautiful souffle, and someone comes along and says, that's not a souffle. That's just a pile of eggs you got excited about. So how on earth does the government get to make this kind of decision in the first place? Well, it all boils down to a very specific legal test. See, the CRA doesn't just take your word for it that you're a religion. They have this framework, one that's been built up from court cases over the years, and every single group that wants to be a religious charity has to pass it. And here it is. You can think of it as the holy trinity of getting approved. These are the three non-negotiable pillars. Your organization has to prove it has a theistic doctrine, a doctrine of worship, and a comprehensive system. If you miss even one of these, your application is probably dead in the water. So let's take a closer look at what each one actually means. First up, the theistic doctrine. And honestly, this is the big one. Your group has to believe in and promote a supreme being, a god or gods. And this is a really hard line in the sand for the CRA. If your spiritual practice is all about reverence for nature or the human spirit or some universal energy, but there's no specific deity, they're likely going to classify you as a philosophy, not a religion. Okay, second, you need a doctrine of worship. It's not enough to just believe in a higher power. Your community has to actively worship or revere that being. We're talking about real, tangible practices here. Things like organized prayer, specific rituals, ceremonies. If your focus is more on, say, meditation or just living an ethical life, that might not be enough to pass this part of the test. And the last piece of the puzzle is the comprehensive system. The CRA is looking for a structured, cohesive framework. You can't just have a loose collection of feel-good spiritual principles or a general lifestyle philosophy. You need to show that you have established doctrines and rituals that all fit together into a complete system of faith. So we've got the rules, but how does this all play out in the real world? Understanding the test is one thing, but seeing why so many well-intentioned groups fail is where it really starts to hit home. These right here are some of the most common traps. For instance, a spiritual center that's focused on mindfulness could easily get rejected for not having a supreme being. Or a group that maybe acknowledges some kind of divine force but is more focused on personal development, they could fail that worship test. And this can be a real problem for some indigenous traditions, Eastern religions, or new religious movements that just don't fit neatly into the CRA's boxes. All right, so it sounds tough, I know, but given this really strict test, how do you actually succeed? Let's switch gears from the problem to the solution and look at how you can frame your application to get that yes. But first, you've got to know about this frustrating little twist. The CRA actually has its own internal guide on this whole topic, but they don't make it public. It's kind of like trying to play a game where the other side is hiding the rulebook. That lack of transparency means you have to be extra strategic and super careful about how you present your case. So the key to success here is to be crystal clear. This is not the time to be subtle. You have to explicitly state your belief in a supreme being. You need to describe your worship practices in detail. And then you have to connect every single one of your activities, every program, every class directly back to those core religious elements. And please use religious language. If you mean prayer, call it prayer, not contemplative practice. Make it absolutely unmistakable that you are a religion.
Let's just zoom out for a second to really get our heads around the fundamental line the CRA is trying to draw here. Because in their world, for legal purposes, there's a very clear distinction between a religion and a philosophy.
Here's a pretty good breakdown of how they see it. From the CRA's perspective, a philosophy asks questions, but a religion worships the source of the answers. A philosophy might focus on personal growth for its own sake, but a religion connects that growth back to a divine will. And while a philosophy brings people together around shared values, a religion, crucially, brings them together around shared worship.
Now, after hearing all of this, there's another really important question you have to ask yourself. Is going through this whole bureaucratic maze even the right move for your organization? Because becoming a registered charity is not always the best or, frankly, the only option.
You know, becoming a charity comes with a ton of regulatory baggage. We're talking annual information returns, really strict rules about political activities, compliance reviews, audits, the whole shebang. If most of your funding comes from your members anyway and not from outside donations, you might actually be better off just staying as a regular nonprofit and avoiding all this red tape.
So, if there is one thing, one key takeaway from all of this, it's this. You absolutely must understand the CRA's 3-part legal test before you even start filling out that application. Knowing the rules of the game is truly the only way to avoid having your application end up in what some lawyers grimly call the charity application graveyard.
And you know, this whole process really leaves us with a much bigger, more profound question. All these rules and legal tests, they exist for a specific purpose, for charity law. But it does raise a pretty deep point for all of us to think about. In a society that's as diverse and is constantly evolving as ours, should a government agency really be the one drawing the lines and defining what does and what does not count as a religion?
Found this video helpful? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tips on building and managing your charity or nonprofit. Ready to take the next step in your journey? Book a free consultation today at charitylawgroup.ca. Thanks for watching. See you on our next video.